Hi, and welcome to the Fatshark Roundtable. We are here celebrating the 1-year anniversary of Vermintide 2's release. And today we are here to answer some of the questions you've asked us. My name is Joachim. I'm a design manager and level designer. I've been here for 11 years this year. And the latest thing I worked on was the Fortunes of War level for the Back to Uberstrike DLC. With me today, I have some other dev sharks. So would you mind introducing yourselves?
Yes, my name is Robin. I am a technical director here at Fatshark. I've worked here for 10 years and 2 weeks. I've been working mostly on modding the last couple of years, really. So yeah, that's me.
My name is Victor. I'm a game designer, but I also work as the team lead for the world team, and we create all the levels. So I work with you, okay? I've been here for 10 years in 2 weeks, so almost as long as Robin. And yeah.
My name is Madeline. I am lead animator and therefore in charge of the animation team, and we do all enemy and player animations. I've worked at Fatshark for 8 years.
So it's been like a year then since we released Vermintide 2. Like it's such a long time. It feels like long and short in memory, at least for me. I wasn't here on the release day, so I was home taking care of a sick kid. But I followed you on Slack, and I know that you were super busy. But can you tell me a bit of how was release day?
I mean, it was crazy. Like there was so much excitement, so much sort of hype, but finally like getting the game out and having people. I mean, people have been playing the closed beta for a while, and then the public beta, but it's not real until release day. And I remember like the CEO running through the office all like crazy because something was not going according to plan.
Never goes according to plan.
Never.
There's something special about releases though. Like nothing goes right.
Yeah.
But
all of a sudden everything breaks down.
But you kind of count on that to happen as well. I think there's like an air like about, you just fix it, whatever it is. But the excitement overshadows all the problems, I think, for most people. Just the general feeling of like, we're finally going to get to show everyone what we've been working on and all the new content that people haven't seen. I mean, you kind of been waiting for this for a long time.
There was a lot of last minute fixes and tweaks, like stuff from the beta that we wanted to get in, and then there was trouble with the build system and so on. So I don't remember exactly how long before the actual, like when the game went live and how much longer we had the build. But it was like, what, an hour or something?
I was doing the release stream, and we were supposed to go live at, I think, 7 o'clock. So we were supposed to do like a 1 hour stream. And I know, because I looked in Slack also in our history, so we went live exactly at 9 o'clock. So I had 2 hours where I had to sort of just buy some time and install it. Say, okay, let's play another round of the beta and like see what is going on. And just like hearing conflicting things of, we're done. Oh no, it's not done. It's not working. And then so it was pretty crazy and hectic. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, there's a really weird sense, like energy going on, where there's excitement and happiness, but also fear and like you're terrible, like, oh, it's never going to work, nothing's going to work, but it's also really excited about letting go and showing people what's going on. So it's a really weird time.
I remember when we finally got to be live and it was announced on the stream, there was like a group of us was like, they don't even look excited. Like, we need to go down and crash the stream and just like, oh my God, excitement. I think we brought the dog as well. Yeah. And it was a good moment. It's a little bit awkward, but it was good.
It's also, we have a production dog.
Yeah, we do. We do have 2 production dogs.
Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah, I mean, at least that was better than the was it the closed beta or something when they did the countdown for the game to be released, and it resulted in everybody logging into the game at the same time, completely overloading all the login servers where all the accounts were supposed to be created, and we took down all the servers.
But it's because I know that because there were so many at the same time, and the PlayFab, which we use as a backend, the ramp up wasn't. They didn't expect us to ramp up so fast. So it was happening, but it just wasn't happening fast enough.
So it's basically like good news, but also bad news.
We'd told them about the release day, but I think we hadn't told them about when the public beta was going to go live, and we hadn't really anticipated the amount of players ourselves. So it just And I think, I mean, the lesson we learned from that was during the release day, we didn't have a countdown. We just snuck it out there, and then like people noticed, like to sort of get us a bit smoother ramp into the peak amount of players.
Yeah. Just to set us off on some of the questions, like we're gonna start with characters, discussing those. But do you have any favorite Vermintide 2 characters?
I love all the characters. I think careers, I think it's mostly Unchained, Shade, Slayer. There's one I am forgetting. Zealot. Yes, the YOLO crew. All the sort of in your face. I mean, I guess Shade isn't that so much, but Shade is more like the spike damage. Just like she goes invisible and then just like melts a boss. Like I like that kind of stuff, that play style.
I'm a big barding guy personally. I just love, in general, like in all games, I always tend to like gravitate towards the dwarves. I don't know why, but I just, maybe it's the beards. I don't know. But I actually play mostly a handmaiden, I think, and I just love her dash ability. And every time I play without the dash ability, I sort of miss it. So I play a lot of Krelian as handmaiden.
I don't really have one favorite. I tend to change a lot depending on what we're working on at the moment. So when we work, we test a lot, especially when we do weapons or enemies. You know, we kind of like need to test a specific setup, and I find myself quite often just finding like, oh my god, this character, this is so good now. Like I didn't realize this was so good. So I've kind of had all of the characters and all of the careers as favorite at one point. So right now, I think I'm like reignited my love for Bardin a little bit. Like in the last few days, it's like, oh, Bardin! And then, that changes.
Yeah, Bardin is great. But personally, I have Saltspire as a favorite because he's like the completely opposite of me.
Or is he? Or is he?
Or is he? So I tend to play Saltspire Zealot. I think that's like the probably the worst kind of character there is, which suits me just fine because I need to be that guy, I guess. But speaking of like our characters, like they are real characters. They are not just like players or heroes that you can choose, but they have like such character and depth. So there's a question like, how do we handle that character development, especially from, I guess, Vermintide 1 to Vermintide 2? How do you like design those to have such depth?
Well, I know I talked a bit, or I feedbacked a lot to the writer while he was sort of trying to figure out the careers and how to sort of write that into the storyline. And it was really a big mix where some of them were like, we want to hit these sort of key points of like what the community has said, like we want to have a Slayer. It's so like iconic for Warhammer, and there's a lot of people wanting to get a Dark Elf in there. So how can we sort of make that work with the lore and still appease that want to have a Dark Elf? So it was an interesting process for him, both to sort of some where he sort of had to figure out a way to rationalize some of the things that we want to do, and others were more organic, where it's like, okay, so what would be a natural evolvation? What are the different branches where you could think like, so for Kruber, like what after the whole Uberstrike thing, what could he possibly do? What could happen? And a lot of them sort of followed a pattern where like one is staying on the path, one is sort of a more redemptive path, and then one was more of a sort of rebellious. So just rebellious, go ham. Like what's the worst thing that could happen to him, essentially, in sort of a personal development point of view.
And it's also interesting since how the game is structured. We can't really tell a linear story, since we really never know what level the player will play the first time or stuff like that. So we have to put up the story of the character development as puzzle pieces. So we can't depend on that you've heard another piece before and stuff like that. So but we try to build the character. The more you play, the more you learn about them and the more stories you hear about them and the more sort of the characters evolve.
Yeah, because there is a linear narrative to,
Yeah.
the story of Vermintide 2.
Yeah.
But character development or character narrative is like completely separate.
Yeah.
And it's also backwards. It's like everything is always backwards in time, generally. It's like, oh, I used to do this, or I was looking for this keep, or I was blah, blah, blah. Oh, back in time, my uncle, or my cousin, rather, I should say, did so-and-so. And, oh, do you remember when blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think there's some things that I wish we could have done more, like more having the characters like evolve over time, where maybe they become a bit softer to each other. And I think there was somewhat of a little bit about that between Vermintide 1 and Vermintide 2.
Definitely.
Sienna starting to call the others darlings,
Yeah.
and there's some
Yeah.
sort of softening,
That
but
was
it's hard to get it into the game organically because it's like Victor was saying, we have no idea in what order things are going to be
No.
played.
Has
and-
Cerulean become softer though? A bit, maybe.
So I think sometimes it's
soft.
like, and that's also something because it's random. We sort of tried to get the whole like a broader spectrum. So Cerulean isn't always Cerulean, hard. She sometimes has these soft moments, and hopefully the random will make those sort of spread out. So the characters seem to have a more dynamic range than being just the same characters all the time.
Yeah, but I feel that they have like a more personal relationship now in Vermintide 2 compared to Vermintide 1 at least.
Definitely.
So if we talk about like character development, of course, like the developing characters in Say, but also in Fatshark, there are like a lot of different teams handling that. So characters, there are, I don't know how many teams involved in that process, but
Quite a few, not all, but almost. I mean, if you take from the start, you first have an idea of a concept of a character, and then you create an actual concept, like a drawing of a character, and then you have to get a model of that same character, which is an entirely different team. And then once you have the model and it's approved, and you feel like, okay, so now we're ready to kind of actually implement this, you have to get a rig and get some bone structures in there. So that's sent to the technical art or animation team. And then after that, you have the animation team to give it the movements and everything to be able to run around. And then you have all the layers of gameplay on top of that. And then finally, dialogue and sounds. So I think it's most teams almost are involved in the process, and it kind of changes a lot during the way, like when it first is introduced as a concept and then what it ends up in the end. It's a collaborative process.
And it's a really long process.
It's a very long process.
It must be hard for somebody not outside of game development to sort of realize all the steps. Like, would you even have heard of a rig that like so the animations are animated by essentially you have like a bone structure inside the character, and then you animate the bones, and then there are rules for how that are sort of handcrafted, sort of painted on the character for how the different body deforms and stuff.
It's kind of like the animators get this doll, so to speak, with all these joints attached to them, so we can move the arms in specific ways. So it's kind of getting like a marionette, and it's just in T-pose, and it doesn't do anything until it lands on our table. But
and mocapping also.
And then like what kind of animations are we going to have? Are we going to have motion capture? Are we going to have hand key animation? Those are completely different styles, and sometimes, a lot of times, we use both. But it's a super long process, and it's a very kind of it's an interesting process because we always have a lot of like talking back and forth, and we share concepts in the group. So I'm looking at concepts of characters, and I have feedback, and okay, that's going to be hard to animate. Like that shoulder pad is going to introduce a problem. We need to think about how we do this. And so everything is always kind of bounced around the office for a long time, and it has to be, otherwise it kind of takes even longer.
Yeah. I think that's why a lot of games like that, if they can, they like to share like a rig between all the characters as much as possible and like set in the constraints once, so you easily can produce new characters. But our characters are all different rigs, right?
Our third-person player characters are different rigs, so the ones that you see running around, they are all different rigs. But the first-person rig the hands and the weapons that you hold. That's the same, and that's shared between all of the player characters. And they actually do share a lot of the animation as well.
All right. That's more than I knew.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like the arms obviously don't look the same. You have Bardin has thicker fingers and Corellian has really kind of slim fingers, and you have different kind of weapons and grips, and it won't always match. And we do have some clipping issues, but the benefits of sharing the rig completely overweighs those small issues that we have.
Yeah. It's cool that we can share them because they are quite different.
They're extremely different, but it's the experience that you see, and you never see the first-person rig. Like you can never get to kind of immediately compare Corellian's hands to Bardin's hands. Oh. So it's kind of, we look at what you perceive. Like, does this feel like you're actually Bardin holding his axe, or is something off here?
Yeah, and I mean the whole perspective is so skewed in a unrealistic way. The whole like you never hold your hands like this in front of your face.
You don't? I always run around.
So like there's so much unnatural stuff to make it feel natural in the end, that if you'd like look at the first person rig maybe from another direction, or if you'd see from the outside,
if you looked at the first person rig from an outside perspective, it looks completely bonkers. Like you would not believe. But we don't really look at the first person animations as an aesthetic thing. That's mainly just how does it feel to play this.
Yeah. I remember, there's a lot of shortcuts we can do in Vermintide where we had problems in earlier games where we were doing third-person games. Like, we're doing third-person melee games, and so you sort of want maybe an attack to go from left to right, like completely horizontally, because it's easier to aim. Like, you don't have the slanting and with depth and stuff that can be really tricky. But like, that works when you're doing like this, because you swing from left to right. But if you try with your right hand and sort of swipe right from right to left, that like your body doesn't bend that way.
Yeah.
But with a first-person rig, you can always sort of make it work somehow, or at least you have a lot more tools.
It rarely looks realistic, and it's not about looking realistic. It's about looking right, feeling right. Yeah, and being fun. And also, of course, we look at like, how does it look from an aesthetic point of view? Does it look off somehow? We want to, for example, be able to show as much of the weapon as possible, especially if it's a nice looking weapon. You want to be able to see what you're holding in your hands. But then the animations on its own, they're very short, and it's very much like these couple of frames are super important, and it's what we kind of notice is like this angle or this specific motion, and it's very unintuitive. It's something that you kind of have to work with and just iterate over and over to get to feel right.
It's quite a process.
Yeah, it is.
And a lot of teams are involved in it. And like, speaking of teams, like there are a number of teams like that are kind of defined within like development here at Fatshark. So like there's a what you said, like craft-specific ones, so animation team, I guess, but usually a part of a bigger team as well. So, do you know how many we have?
Yeah, I thought about this earlier, but our main teams are action team, which you are a part of, which does combat, like weapons and enemies mainly. Then we have the world team, which you and me are part of, and we do all the levels basically. And then we had during Vermintide 2's development, we had a meta team as well, and they handled all of the interface, so all the menus, but also the UI, and also they did talents and traits for weapons and stuff like that. But then we also have like an engine team that handles the game engine, which we work on, because we have our own game engine, so they constantly update that with new features and stuff like that. And then there's a bunch of like smaller. How would you say?
We have a tools team.
The tools team, exactly.
TA team.
We also have a live team now, which founded after release to be able to get a better pacing of like when we release updates, and sort of have somebody like, even if new maps are made by the world team, it goes via the live team that can sort of package it with maybe other things that should be released at the same time, and sort of make sure that it's not out of line with what the community right now feels is important and such. Because like generally when we're making DLCs and stuff, it takes a lot more months than you'd think, because we have many parallel teams that maybe something could take 6 to 9 months, but for you it's maybe 3 months since the last thing we released,
Exactly.
because there's been multiple teams working on them at the same time, and because of that lag, sometimes maybe the different sort of feature teams weren't completely in line with what the community wanted at just that time. So having it go through the live team would sort of help that to make them maybe do some last minute tweaking or whatever. And I think it's been working well. I mean, since
It's starting to work better, better and better, I think.
Yeah, since Bogenhafen was released, we've sort of gotten a better pace, I think, to the DLCs and more in line with what people want.
But we also have like marketing team and HR and all sorts of other things that you don't necessarily see. Yeah, the sound team and effects team, and like some teams, discipline teams are only 2 people, whereas others are kind of 10 or.
Yeah, and then I mean we have a code team,
but
the code team is also like the engine team is a sub team to the code team, and then there's like gameplay
and a gameplay, and there's like all these sorts of
it's very complicated. And then there's me that's like not on a team. I've been like the
Team Robin.
been like the modding team for I don't know how long.
So you are the shade.
Exactly. I'm just going off on my own, doing my own stuff. Yeah, no, actually, the modders are my team. Like I have the biggest development team in all of Fatshark. I have all the modders. On my side.
But it's cool. Like we are like active parts in different teams, and we have been like for many years. Like seeing that evolve has been like quite a awesome process.
Yeah, we've changed a lot. I mean, we used to have an enemies team and an action team, but then we realized that then you sort of get a disconnect between.
They have so much in common.
Yeah, they have so much in common. Like you can't do the enemies on this side and then the player code on that side.
Pretty early on in development for Vermintide 2.
Yeah,
we landed in the like action team that was like handling all the combat.
No, it works better if you like create the weapons in unison with the enemies that are supposed to like.
Yes, definitely.
So they can.
And the animators are. We've never really had like our own team to do our own thing. Like we've only ever been part of like creating the whole experience. So we work super closely with AI and design. Yeah. And we communicate sometimes, a lot of times, more with them than we do with our fellow animators.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of like you can have world team as an example as well, because at first when we started, not in Vermintide 2, but before that at least, like we had more of a level design and level art. Yeah. And as we merged them, it just became so much better. And also when we decided to pull in resources like FX and sound, so like we didn't have the disconnect. So there's one team working together. But I was wondering if like you could tell us a bit about the level design, or not the level design process, like the world process, I guess, in general. Like how do you start making a level?
It can start in many different ways. Usually we just try to think of new cool ideas that we haven't done previously, or maybe like a variation of something that we've done previously. I'm thinking mainly of Vermintide 2 now, so since we already had Vermintide 1 as a base. So we try to think of new places that we hadn't seen in Warhammer universe. We think of new ways of switching around an idea that we maybe used before, or a completely new idea. So maybe like new ideas for Vermintide 2 was having the payload system. So out of that came Hunger in the Dark. And then we combined that with the darkness that we had done previously for the DLC. What's it called? The dungeons level.
In Drachenfels.
Yeah, in Drachenfels, exactly. So like taking a new idea and an old idea and combining them in a new way and trying to come up with new ideas. So we start by just sort of spitballing ideas, like what could be cool. And then when we have all of the ideas, we look at them together and try to like match them up together. And like these three sort of have something in common. They can be, so then we create like an act of that, so that we can maybe these are all would be cool as a Skaven act. So we created it starts with it's not Evinrude, it's Athel Yenlui. What is it? Athel Yenlui, Screaming Bell, Into the Nest, or it ends with Into the Nest, and the fourth one is.
I want to say Catacombs, but that's.
No.
That maybe the same.
Yeah, but so that became sort of the Skaven act of the game. But I mean, basically, we start out with just random ideas, and then we try to sort of see how they can fit together. And something that we really wanted to do with Vermintide 2 from Vermintide 1 was have a much wider range between the different levels and much more different settings and different, or even inside of the levels, make sure that we have maybe 3 different settings in one level, so it really feels like an adventure when you're playing the level. It makes the levels feel much longer and much more of an adventure than maybe they are. Like let's say like running through a level without the enemies, it takes maybe 7 minutes, so that's not very long time. But playing it with enemies and then having all these new impressions come to you, like it feels like a really long adventure, and that's something that we wanted to really like have that as a good thing. Because I mean, if it's the first one we do a level, it's usually like the same thing in the whole level, and it just feels like, this is not very fun. There's nothing going on, and then you're like, okay, maybe let's add a cave here, or you go into a forest, or you go into a dark place, or into these ruins or something. And then all of a sudden it feels like you're on this really cool and epic adventure.
Yeah, because it's a bit about contrast,
Yeah.
and also just emphasizing co-op elements as well. So I know that like we worked a lot with the cool ideas for Vermintide 2 and just put them in the context of will this be a cool co-op mechanic? Like payload is a classic, I guess, mechanic from other multiplayer games, which just forces you to play together, or at least in this context, it really does that. So I know that a lot of our mechanics or gameplay elements rather would be things that we put in there to, I guess, emphasize co-op. So it's the balance between I guess a single player adventure and a co-op experience, because you can play with bots, but you should also play with others, because that's where Vermintide 2 really shines, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, even when you're playing with the bots, it feels like you're playing with other players. I think a lot of the time you sometimes you forget that you're playing with bots. I know I've seen a lot of like streams that are playing with bots, and they think it's another player, and they don't really realize. So I mean, it does happen. Some people won't agree with me, but still.
I worked a bit on the bots for Vermintide 1, and there's a lot of sort of overlap, and that was one of the things that we, like, one of the guiding principles was we want to make things that feel as much as possible as other players. Like, we don't want these to feel like henchmen, like your henchmen that you're running around, because that's not what the situation is going to be when you're playing the live game. Like, these are your teammates. So we wanted as much as possible to make them, act like they were teammates. Obviously, it's an unachievable ideal, but at least sort of aiming for that. So they can easily just, like, if somebody disconnects for a while, it takes a while until a new player gets in, that there wouldn't be as much of a disconnect between.
Were you alone working on bots?
For a long while, but not in Vermintide 2. But I got help. I got help in different waves from other people. So yeah, I think if you have issues with the bots, I think a lot of me is unfortunately on me.
I think
This is painting a huge like crosshair on my face.
Well, one of the best features that makes the bots feel like humans is that if you jump, they will jump after you.
Oh, yeah.
It's meant to make them be able to traverse a level, but it also works really well. Like if you just, like players do, you walk on a street and you jump because you have nothing to do, and the bots will do it as well, and that makes them look like humans, which is really cool.
Because we have so to be able to easily the bots path through the levels and also the enemies, we have something called a Navmesh, which is sort of a simplification of the topology of the level. Yeah. And generally, it doesn't go down cliffs and stuff. The enemies have specific sort of like elevators in the Navmesh to sort of to get down, but the bots don't have this. So the one way to solve that, to make them not jump down before you and to make them be able to follow you. When you jump between two places, the game tries to build sort of a bridge in the Navmesh for them to follow you and sort of try to mimic, like, when did you jump and like how are you moving through the air and so on. And it's actually something we stole from another game. I don't know if I should say, but
Inspired.
It was inspired by another co-op game, and it was their sort of first like stab at it, and it had seemed to work very well for them. So we took that idea, and it's worked really well for us. We've been having to tweak it sometimes, but it's mostly about making the system more robust, like making sure that there's always a bridge we can create a bridge in more cases, and the bridge can actually be followed by the bots.
Yeah, most of the times when you end up when there are weird situations, it falls on my table. Fixing Navmesh and smoothing things for the bots.
Yeah, and it's difficult because the bots and the enemies use the same Navmesh, and that's
it's good actually from a development point of view.
Right.
Just saying, it makes it much easier.
Right, but sometimes it might not be great that something that's good for the bots might not be good for the AI. And vice versa.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what's the favorite thing you worked on Vermintide 2?
For me, it's sort of two things. I think the thing that I'm most passionate about is the modding. But the thing that I really enjoyed working on, because it's fun to work on, was I did some really early some research in the pre-production, where I built the system that's then used for the flame barrels and the troll vomit. It's sort of a 3D liquid damage
where it
system.
spreads out.
Yeah, where it spreads out. I'd made a similar thing in Bionic Commando, which was a 2D game. And I wanted to take it to 3D, see if we could manage to achieve it.
Was
in 3D.
that like a Hack Week project? Did you do it as a Hack Week project?
I think it might have started. I might have started a bit on Hack Week to show the proof of concept,
possible, yeah.
And then it sort of became a part of the pre-production. And I took it further, and then some of the AI team took it even further.
That's been a very, very, very good system, Robin.
Yeah, definitely.
I was so pleased when I was done with it, because it can run downstairs, it can do all kinds of stuff. It's fairly versatile. It's very simple. It's not physically correct in any way, but it's it's simple to tweak, and it can do a lot of stuff.
It looks really good. I mean, it's really impactful.
Yeah, I mean, we have the flame bombs from Vermintide 1, but I think the flame barrels look so much better, and I just love throwing it into a trench and then just see how it fills the trench and with fire. It's cool.
You like fire?
Yeah. yeah. Maybe actually Sienna is my favorite character.
I think I'd say the event on Righteous Stand, because we had one version of it in the beta. And we really didn't feel that it was working, and we were really sort of, there's something missing here. And it was in a 2 weeks period, we completely redid the whole event and made it really, really cool. And I remember I was so excited about it's going to be so cool. The players have played this now, and they think this is how it's going to be. And then when we release the game, it's going to be completely different. And it's going to be, because we, from the early beta, it was just, you were just standing around the statue, and lots of enemies came, and nothing really happened. And then the door opened, and you left, and it was sort of unclimactic. And then we changed it to where the whole, we were like, okay, well, what can we do? So let's just cut a hole in the floor. Let's just elevate the statue and open up. You go down into the statue instead, and it was so much better. And all of the effects and stuff. We had nothing of that 2 weeks earlier before we released the game. And it was so much fun to just come up with an idea and then just execute it really, really fast and just do it. And I think the end result was 200 times better than what we had previously.
Yeah,
so.
The sound does so much.
Exactly.
The particle effect, sort of.
So it's so much fun when you sort of the whole team comes together and everybody pitched in,
it's
and we have a clear idea what we want to do, and then we just execute it.
It's almost like a game jam. You get that sense of everyone's going in the same direction, and you have this mission, and the result's really good. Yeah. I think one of my favorite things, because I really love working on the enemies in general. That's what I do most on my everyday work. But I think the enemies that kind of stick out and create a new kind of challenge from an animation perspective. I think the Chaos Spawn was one of those things when we started, and I saw the first concept, and we kind of how is this going to go? How big is this going to be? Oh my God, and he's going to grab the players, and there was all these challenges that I think are really fun. So it was the process of kind of coming up with how it was supposed to work and how it was supposed to look. That was, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing the eating animation.
I remember it was very, very early on in Vermintide 2. Me and the rest of the design team went out to my place and had lunch and just sat down and thought about ideas for enemies and stuff. And I remember we came up with the Chaos Spawn, and we were like, yeah, he's going to have this tentacle arm is going to grab the enemy, the player, and it's going to use them as a weapon. We're like, okay, this is never going to happen. But it's a cool idea, but it's never going to happen.
Exactly.
No,
we got
like,
that
there were so
idea.
many people that didn't believe in it.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I think I was one of them at some point.
And I was the one who proved you all guys
Yes.
wrong because I heard of it. I was like, yeah, of course we can do that.
But
Let's do it.
we did the prototype
so
together.
we built a little prototype.
With the rat ogre actually as a chaos pawn, where he just extended his arm
we hadn't
and
really
just
figured
grabs.
out exactly how he was going to grab
It was like
people.
we don't even know how this is going to
Yeah.
work yet, but we just let's try it with the character that
It
we
was
already have.
it was almost more like Pudge in Dota, where he just like his whole arm just like straight, because we thought it's a tentacle, it can probably stretch, and it like could grab people
It's gonna
from
be
like
really quickly, so you're not gonna see
20 meters away and just like drag them in and then like slam.
We should
slam
see if
them
we can dig
before.
up footage of that. Did you film it or did you?
Yeah,
like,
I
we
definitely
probably have that somewhere.
because I remember after doing it, I was like, oh, this is so awesome. I like made a video and put up in Slack.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny that the Chaos Pawn actually all the time walks around with every character as a weapon. It's just hidden, but he has all of the characters as a weapon, and then we just put them on when he's using them. So yeah, so you can imagine the Chaos Pawn running around with 15 different characters as a weapon. And then
Yeah. It was fun to do. It was also like you kind of realize how different the different characters are when you are doing animations that like, okay, so the grabbing animation and the eating animation for Bardin and for Kruber, for example, they are completely different because Bardin's so short. So if I use the same animation for Bardin as for Kruber would be sticking like his body through the head and like halfway through the body of the Chaos Pawn. So it's like, oh, well, they are very different, like in height and in size.
I know for my part, like I came in quite late in production because I was away for a while during like Vermintide 2 production. I was on parental leave. So I came back and I helped wrap up the keep and the prologue mainly. So and those turned out really well. But I'm not gonna choose that one as like the favorite moment, because actually my favorite moment was after release, when I can't remember how many days after. It wasn't like too many days after we released it. And I played with some random players. And I had my Fatshark tag and everything. And I was like, yeah, hello, I'm one of the developers, just so you know. And they're like, yeah, right. Of course you are. And they were playing the game much better than me. And I really, really enjoyed that. Like they knew where the tomes were. They knew where the Grims were. I didn't know where all the Grims were.
They carried you.
They carried me. And it was like so awesome seeing that transition from my game to their game, or our game as a whole. And that was like such an amazing moment, I think. It's really, really something special, like having this shared experience, because Vermintide 2 isn't really like our game.
No,
It's,
not at all.
Right.
it's a shared one.
I have the opposite of that. It's like I love, like, because all the, like, there's so many parts of the community. I think it's less now, but they're like, oh, the devs never play. They don't play on Legend. And like, I just love carrying people through Legend just to prove it. It's like, yeah, the devs can't play. But usually I don't tell them that I'm a dev. It's just like, I type in yellow and they're like, why do you have a yellow name? And like, what's that big frame? I'm like, oh, it's a megalodon mouth. And they're like, yeah, I can see that, but why do you have it? And then somebody usually figures out, hey, wait, are you a developer? Oh, that's really cool, etc.
Just hands up kind of thing. How many of you can play on Legendary?
We have some people behind the camera.
Well, we have a couple of more in the office.
I'm old. I can't do this.
Same. I can't. I think a veteran is kind of my limit. Not limit, because I can probably play champion as well. But I like veteran. That's my safe space.
But I was the first person to complete Fortunes of War alone with bots.
All right. Yeah.
On Recruit. But still, the first person.
I was the first person in the world to complete it on Legend with 3 other developers.
I have already completed it alone.
I was the first. I was the first to play it.
Oh, right.
Since I created it. So, and is there something else that you like learned from Vermintide 1, by the way, that you like brought into Vermintide 2?
A massive amounts. I mean, it's
Nothing.
hard to
Okay.
really
Yeah. Yes.
like,
Nothing. All right. We'll move on.
I think like it was, we never really stopped working. Like we released Vermintide 1 and then we just continued working on what we wanted to kind of Vermintide 1 to be. And all of that got put into Vermintide 2.
Yeah.
So I think we just built on top of the things that we already have, and we learned from the things that we wanted to do and the mistakes that we made, basically.
Yeah, for us, there's no clear sort of separation between Vermintide 1 and Vermintide 2 when this works, because we kept working.
Yeah, we just kept working, and we kept producing enemies and prototypes of enemies, and we did lots of testing and like how are we going to introduce these sort of kind of mechanics with the stuff that we already have, and just played around. So, and that all got implemented into Vermintide 2. So there's no clear, like for me, it's been like one long development, Vermintide 1 and Vermintide 2.
For me, it was that we can do bosses well. Like we'd done the first when you fight against the Grey Seer, Rasknit in the end of the main game, and I mean it was cool, but it wasn't really like a boss fight.
You never got to really fight him.
Yeah, you're mostly just trying to
dodge your. Yeah. Oh, we had some good times on that one.
There weren't a lot of constraints, and there were very little code support. It was
it's more of a boss level than a boss fight.
I would almost say it was no code support whatsoever.
Yeah, and it also incorporated all the different like event things from all the other maps into. It was sort of the okay, we've taught you all the mechanics, now you need to do them in a row.
Yeah, exactly. I know we had that mindset, like the worst thing is when you have a boss fight and it has nothing to do with actual gameplay. Like learning to do something during an entire game, and here's the end boss.
And it's completely different.
Yeah. So in that sense, White Rat, like kind of, it did what it should.
Right.
Like it was regular gameplay at hard, and then we spiced it up a bit.
Yeah.
But definitely, we actually started like the path towards bosses, you and me.
Yes. So the first thing we were like, I'd made bosses for Bionic Commando, and I wanted us to make bosses. And we had a Hack Week project where we made some different enemy variations, and one of them was sort of a boss version of Storm Vermin, sort of a scaled up version of Storm Vermin. So then when you and I started working on Stromdorf, we were like, yeah, let's make a boss. Like, we need something for this DLC. It's only going to have 2 maps. We had 3 maps in the previous ones. We need to make something that has like a big impact. And we had some ideas for the first map to be more sort of open worldish and feel more open. It was like, okay, so what do we do for the second map? Yeah, let's do a boss. And there was so many people that were like, oh no, are you really sure? Like, yeah.
But
like,
it also had been on like everyone's wish list.
Yeah. It was, I mean, both internally and externally, it was something that we wanted to do. So, but yeah, we managed to convince like, we're going to make this boss fight. So we made the arena and we started working on the boss fight and proved that, yeah, we can do cool boss fights. So it was actually after that was released and it was so well received that we decided to make boss fights for all the end of the campaigns. I mean, both for Skittergate and for all before that, there was no real plan for boss fights because we were a little bit burned by the reception of the other boss fight. So that was, yeah, it's really cool to be able to work. And it was also one of those, it felt almost like a game jam because we had very little time. Yeah. We just had to make do with what we had. Like, how much can we reuse from Storm Vermin animations? What changes do we need to do with the model? How can we like come up with the backstory? Like he has this aura when you shoot at him in certain phases because game design really wanted to have like, they wanted him to take a break. So you sort of had a pacing where like, now you fight against enemies, now the boss is in your face. Now you fight against enemies, now the boss is in your face. And so we felt we had to figure out like, oh, so what is he doing? Like, why don't you just like dodge around the enemies and just like unload on him? So we invented this magic item, which was his trophy rack, which had an enchantment to sort of, so he takes a lot less damage from ranged weapons when he's in there. And if you ever get close, he does this sort of big clock wipe 360 spin attack. So that like that kind of like, these are our challenges, let's just execute. It's always the best in game development.
Yeah, I really enjoyed working on all the bosses.
Didn't he also start out as a Hack Week project?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. He started out as a Hack Week project. And for those of you that don't know, roughly 4 times a year we have Hack Weeks where everybody can work, everybody in the company split into teams and they work on the stuff that they want to work on. The only sort of requirement is that it has to be for the good of the company, or potentially for the good of the company. So it provides a creative outlet for people to like make these things that maybe seem too risky, or try things that they wanted to do a long time, but it's been hard to. And then we try to sort of reconcile that afterwards. The game director goes through all the Hack Week projects and tries to figure out like, okay, so which ones can we get into the game? How much would it cost, et cetera, et cetera.
A lot of the features are actually started as Hack Week projects at some point.
Yeah.
The pub brawl.
We also
the
have,
pub brawl was a Hack Week project.
but we also have a lot of stuff like that we have like in our Hack Week drawer, I guess.
Yeah.
That isn't in the game.
Yes.
As well. So there's a lot of like creative, I guess.
The mutators that we just released are all Hack Week.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, more or less.
So that's also why they're sort of like a bit.
Like
I guess.
Last Stand is a Hack Week project from the beginning, like
Right.
that we turned into.
Yeah, the social wheel was a Hack Week project I worked on. So yeah,
there's a lot of things that kind of they reappear in the next Hack Week. Like you worked on them the previous Hack Week, and now you want to continue working on them, like to prove your point or to kind of get to a state where you can show it and people kind of understand what the vision is. And there's a couple of those in the backlog that I'm like kind of really longing to start working on again.
Yeah, it's always like when you work on Hack Week stuff, generally you have to hack stuff into the game to make it work. So it's usually like you have to usually re-implement the thing, or like, but it gives you some like quick prototype and proof of concept where you can like, okay, this is what we want. This is what we want to do.
We have like a Friday meeting where we kind of show everyone what everyone's been working on, which is always a lot of fun.
It's really amazing. There's
there's
much
some
cool stuff.
Really cool stuff. And everything sounds so awesome. So it's like, oh, it's almost finished.
Yeah.
Everything's always finished.
Yeah. I think like every April Fool's joke we've ever made has been like a Hack Week project.
Yeah,
I think maybe,
so
I don't know, there's probably some that came from marketing, like purely, but I think a lot of them, all the ones with videos of some crazy game mode or something like that has been. And some even turned into mods, like the Death Wish.
Yeah, and speaking of mods, like and like fan created content, like
right.
What are your views on that as the mod person here?
I mean, the current system with the sanction mods and all the sort of convenience stuff has been really great for the game. I think it has allowed a lot of these things that we maybe have trouble prioritizing, because it's like, it would take some work and it maybe complicates something, and it's not fits for everybody, that it's like, this is really a nice outlet to have these mods where people can download and they can choose what stuff they want to do. But like the big holy grail is to get like new game modes, to get stuff that changes gameplay. We're gonna have to figure out like a new system how to get those into the game, because one of our rules for sanction mods is you can't change the experience for other players that haven't opted in somehow. So we need to figure out a way where like somebody can like subscribe to this mod and they can maybe play it in like where they can still get loot and stuff, but sort of package it in a way so it doesn't disrupt other players. And I think like we've alluded to it previously, but we are working on like a bigger mod tool update where all the modders are going to get access to our tools, and they're going to get access to all the sort of source assets in the game, so they much easier can make these type of mods. And
you will basically be able to create a level.
Yeah, they could essentially make an entire game, sort of, in effect. And I think specifically levels is going to be the really cool thing. And when we start getting a bunch of modded levels and in the modded realm and stuff, we're going to have to. Or one thing I want to do is like figure out how we can get those into the real game, or sort of somehow make them feel worthwhile playing and feel balanced. If that means we are going to have to sort of help the modders out, or if we're going to have like some kind of rotating scheme like Counter-Strike, or how we're going to solve that, that's going to be an interesting challenge. But it's something that's going to have to grow naturally.
There's never going to be like a one answer to that question. It's always going to depend on the content, basically. How we need to handle it.
And I think like a lot of people are worried about like stuff that's like not lore correct and stuff. And it's always fine to make not lore accurate mods, as long as one, they don't infringe on somebody else's IP, because that's like really dangerous for Games Workshop. They can get in trouble with other IP owners and stuff. And the second part is like, okay, so if it's going to be something that is for all players, like that they didn't opt in, like they didn't choose to play or something like that, it's going to have to be lore correct. But somebody could probably make like a level that's sci-fi, I guess, or something. And as long as that's just a mod and it's in the modern realm, that's fine.
With Thomas the Tank Engine?
Maybe not Thomas the Tank Engine. That's
another IP.
Yeah,
right?
that actually mod is in the workshop. I hope we don't get sued, or I hope Games Workshop doesn't get in trouble for that.
But could you envision us having like fan-made characters? Like what do you?
Yeah, sure. Like any new content that's fan made, I think it's great. Like I can't wait to see what the community's gonna come up with.
It would be really cool to be able to just like switch out the skin I see for Sienna, for instance.
Yeah.
Somebody makes like a really cool Sienna model, and then either you have just that as a local switch, you can switch out how Sienna looks, or maybe even like be able to somehow get that into the game. Like we take it and we do whatever adjustments are needed, so it's performant and so on, and then like get that in as some kind of sort of mod creator created DLC pack. Like if we can think of all kinds of mods. I mean, where we sell it, like where it's sold or on Steam Marketplace, and somehow the modders get a cut, like some games do, or just like we do, like I think it's Killing Floor, that just collect a bunch of mods and then just release that as a DLC and share the revenue with the modders. Or we're just like just let it grow organically and see what people do.
I guess in a year we'll sit down here and just this is how it turned out actually.
Yeah, exactly.
That's part of why it's so exciting as well.
It's so hard to predict.
Yeah.
And I think it's really going to extend the life of the game if done well. So it's.
I think it is awesome. It is awesome that we have like great mod tools and great modders out there. I know we're gonna get too fort in some way as a level.
Yeah, I think that's part of the fun is that we sort of owe it to the players and people that bought this game to stay true to what the game is, and that's part of our job to make sure that it is Vermintide and we don't stray too far from that. But the modders are free to do whatever they want, and that's what's cool with it. They have a freedom that we can't have, so in a way you're sort of jealous of them that they can do all these fun, crazy ideas. We have to stay true to what is Warhammer and what is Vermintide, and So yeah.
Do you have any favorite mods?
I can't play without the numerical UI mod to get numbers on all the health points and see who's got what's it called, the health regen trinket. And so I just like every time like it broke once and I was like, please fix it. I can't play the game without it. That's for me.
I'm a Puritan, so I play unmodded.
I rarely play with mods, but I think like the photo mode mod seems to be pretty like a good thing. But I don't play with mods because I mainly play when I work.
I guess that's one of the weird things as well. Like we don't really see the game as a game. We have it as a development kind of sandbox as well. So we have this kind of weird, I guess the same kind of weird relationship that a director would have to seeing his or her movie.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, sometimes you do forget that you are working and you just enjoy playing.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens, but it's still like most of the time you come at the game from an angle of, okay, what needs to be fixed?
Yeah.
Like, what do we need to do here?
For me, though, I have to say Vermintide 1 and 2 are the games I've played the most, probably, that I've worked on, that I've never really felt super burnt out, because you always you pour so much of your life and your drive into making the game, and you're never really 100% satisfied. There's always something that could have been done better or could have been done in a different way. So you always get a little sort of burnt out towards the end of the development time, and it'll take a long time between then and when you can come back to the game with fresh eyes and just enjoy it for what it is. But I think with Vermintide 1 and 2, that never really happened. I've just been able to play the game
it's funny because we sort of had the opposite, because I've been playing it. I was playing it so much during development, so when we finally released, I was like, I can't really play this right now. I've seen this like
Yeah.
every day, played it. And you had like the opposite. You came like you didn't play it as much during development, then you just took off and just started playing.
Yeah, I think I mean partly because I've been working with modding,
Yeah.
I've been working with the boss. I've sort of been working with stuff that's a little
Around
bit sort of,
the game, yeah.
Yeah, it's around the game. So just enjoying the core of the game when it was like ready and finished has been.
I find for me, it's like when we work on any new content before we've released it, but it's like at a state where we kind of are about to release it. That's when I kind of reignite my love for the game, when I see something new. Like playing a new level, for example, that's like, oh my god, this is so exciting! And like, where are the tomes? Like, where's everything? Like, that's kind of a new like love for it. But then once you've kind of iterated on it too many times and seen too many things and too many issues and try to fix things, and then it becomes work again.
Yeah, you start seeing through the matrix, sort of.
Yeah.
Like
but
you
like
just see
the first thing and trying out a new level that's almost finished, like if you can get to that point where you haven't even like played the white box or anything, that's a really cool experience.
But it is interesting that it's a completely different experience to play it on your personal account after it's released.
Yes.
You sort of, this is like so this is actually
This
a lot
is
of fun.
nice.
Yeah, because when you're like, okay, I'm gonna pick up like painting scraps that was just released. Like doing that on your dev account is like maybe it's not that much fun. It's like I've done this now. Okay, but then you do it and you actually get a reward, and you can't just unlock all of the paintings and stuff like that. Then it starts like, fuck, I need to find the painting scraps. We need to play more. So it's a completely different thing.
Yeah, definitely. I know that we have like some really exciting things for the future. And Freya is quite excited as well.
She's super excited for the future.
Yeah.
The future of doggy snacks.
So that's awesome. And I guess we're gonna see what happens. There's so much great stuff coming out for the future.
I wish I could talk about things that I know is going to happen.
Like I have to say, like the next 6 months are going to be super exciting. And I mean, after the next 6 months, it's just that I don't know what's coming. But like the next 6 months, compared to maybe the previous 6 months, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we sort of got the engines running now.
Yeah,
So
we started to hit our stride
Yeah.
and like trying to figure out like how we do stuff and what's important and what we need to expand on.
It's really exciting, like being part of, I guess, this like shared journey, shared experience with the players as well. Like, and we really couldn't have done it without all your fantastic support, like all your feedback, all your like everything, reading on forums or on Reddit. I mean, that's invaluable to us. So it's like really,
I mean,
you
all
help
the
us
devs,
make
all the devs read
Yes.
on the forums and
We
on
are
Reddit.
big lurkers.
Yes, we are lurkers big time.
We see the good, we see the bad.
Yeah, we see all of it.
Yes. So definitely don't feel that we are like disconnected in any way. Just sometimes it takes a long time for us to just get on track or get up speed.
Usually like saying that like we know about something or acknowledging something or trying to explain something, it sort of puts a timeline on things that we might not be able to sign up on. So usually, and it's always like, if you promise that you're gonna fix the game, like what does that really mean? Actually, and stuff could change on the way. We maybe we say, oh yeah, we're going to implement this and this and this, and then things change while we're working on it, and we realize this is actually the best point. Like this is the best thing to do. So then we promise something else, and there's obviously going to be disappointment. So usually, like we try to focus on like, okay, let's fix the game rather than promising to fix the game or fix whatever thing the problem is rather than promising. But that means obviously that it sometimes seems like we don't listen, we don't look, it just takes time.
Yeah.
Game development takes a lot of time.
Yeah, it takes so
Yeah,
much
it
longer
really
time than
does.
people think.
Even though we can turn around some things like quite fast, we can work on specific issues. Just there is a process.
It's quite a lot of
it's
people
super-
involved in almost everything.
Yeah, and it's also super unpredictable, like from an outside view. Even if like you're not working, like you're a game dev at that company, but not working in that specific discipline or that specific team, to sort of try to estimate how long time different things are going to take, because there's so many parameters, there's so many things that affect how much, like constraints that affect how long something takes. And
Like a good rule of thumb is that everything is more complicated than you think at
Yeah.
first. That's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
but then you're in the ballpark, and then you add like 10 more weeks, and then that's probably where you're gonna.
Yeah, but still, we know of cool things that are coming, and we need your help figuring out where we're going next as well.
Yeah.
And we will take you on this grand adventure together. I guess. Should we celebrate a bit?
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have some?
I have some
Yeah.
celebration stuff here. There's one for you, and one for you,
Ooh,
and one
thank
for
you.
you, and one for the dog.
No.
So should we do a 1, 2, 3 something?
Yeah. I don't know.
1,
Will
2,
this,
3.
will this work at all? So I just gotta ask Ronald here. Okay.
This is where most decisions are made.
Yeah. All right. So will this work out? Oh, I can't really see. It says.
It's broke because I've used it so much during the
It
Come
crashed.
on. Maybe this doesn't work. Maybe. Let's see. A definite yes.
Definitely, yes. Sweet.
All right. So. 1, 2, 3, Sigmar.
Okay, yeah.
Press Sigmar.
Press Sigmar.
1,
2, 3.
Did my work?
My work. Awesome. Thank you so much.